Okay, everybody, welcome back to What Self-Care Looks Like. This is Brittany Elliott. I am a self-care and mom life management coach, and I help working moms create simple, sustainable self-care routines that impact their overall wellness and enrich their lives. And you're in the Mother's Day series, and I'm really excited to have our next guest on. We're going to be chatting with Tiffany West today. Tiffany is the proud creator and CEO of Interior Health Design LLC, an inner wellness life coaching company that promotes authentic living and soul based healing from the inside out. She is an emotional care coach, helping women stop the spiral of emotional overwhelm and transform their pain into power and purpose. From being a corporate high achiever, full time student, and single mom of her baby boy having life threatening asthma his whole life, doing everything she could just to make ends meet, to complete burnout, trying to maintain such a high stress lifestyle. We know all about that. For decades, she suffered from anxiety, depression, debilitating chronic pain, and gut issues like ulcerative colitis and IBS, told by countless doctors that there was nothing they could do. This inspired her to create the Calm Remedy, a proven 4 step framework that allowed her to take back control of her health and her life. This soul shifting step by step method helped Tiffany recover and heal from the emotional trauma at the root of her physical and mental health challenges. She is a wife and proud mama of 2 beautiful boys. Tiffany loves serving others and finds the most joy in nature, cooking nourishing foods, dancing, manifesting the life of her dreams, being a mom, and healing her body. Welcome, Tiffany.
Hi, Brittany. Thank you so much.
Oh, it's my pleasure. And just in your bio, you've just overcome so much, in your life, and the fact that you've made your way to processes that really helped you, and then you've made it like your life's work to help other people through that. Like I love that. I think that's beautiful, and I think when you find your purpose, it's very important to use the gift you're granted, and give
Mhm.
back. So can you tell us a little bit more, just about your journey into motherhood?
Yeah, absolutely. So, in my early 20s, I was about 19, 20. My dad and I had a really estranged relationship. He was very controlling, military, just old school black dad. Just, I didn't really have a say in any of my choices like a lot of us growing up, which didn't seem like a lot of a big deal. But for me being so super sensitive emotionally, very sensitive in my body, my skin, like everything about me has always just been super sensitive. And I just didn't have parents that knew how to relate or knew how to meet the needs that I had. It wasn't their fault, but they just didn't have the capacity and the knowledge to know, oh, this is how we kind of help her emotionally. And that would calm other things happening, like all the health symptoms I was having in my body, along with anxiety. So when I turned 18, my dad had a plan for me to go to college. He picked the school. I didn't have a say in that. He picked the classes. None of it was what I wanted to do. So I just decided I was going to move out and work and do my own thing. And that he was not happy with that. And he completely disowned me. And that was really hard. So I went into my early 20s just wilding out. Like I was doing a lot of drinking and I was smoking a lot of weed and hanging out with people, kind of seeking the things that I wasn't getting at home, but I didn't see it as that back then. I saw it as very empowering and this is my choice. I was really responsible. I was going to work. So my lifestyle before my oldest was just fast paced, and I was really running from the pain that I just didn't realize I was having, and I called it partying, right? And I would even have friends back then saying, "You don't belong here. This is you have a calling to do something different, something better." And I just used to think they were speaking a foreign language. So when I met my oldest dad, I was about 24, 25 years old, and that relationship with Hell's on Wheels. I mean,
Mm.
he was cheating and lying and narcissistic stuff. And of course, when I was in the throes of it, I didn't know that that's what it was. But, after my son was born, baby mamas were popping out of the woodwork, calling me, telling me I should have had an abortion. I should have found out one of the other girls and I were pregnant at the same time, and our children are 2 weeks apart. 2 weeks. Yeah, so the journey into motherhood, even being pregnant, was filled with chaos and filled with trauma. And so my precious baby was just absorbing all of that. And I didn't do the work, the trauma healing and the emotional work that I do now. So I was not aware of the impact that was having on him. But I knew that my situation wasn't good. So about 6 months into my pregnancy, his dad just had to go. He was on the run from the feds. Like it just was not a good situation at all. And I didn't belong in it. My son didn't belong in it. And frankly, I was just praying for my son's dad too, to just for God to just give him a way to get his own life together because he had kids. At the time, I didn't know he had all these other kids. He was saying that my son was going to be his firstborn. And come to find out he had two older ones. So it was just a whole Jerry Springer episode with that pregnancy. And if it hadn't been for my son Jaden, he was the light at the end of the tunnel with that. Like I'm really, really blessed that he's even here today because of how stressed out and how just dysregulated I was in that relationship. Just trying to just understand what was going on, but I was being lied to. So I was just really confused, really anxious, really depressed, just overwhelmed. Like everything was just awful. I didn't eat healthy. So my baby was born, Jaden, with asthma. They said he had RSV and they couldn't call it asthma, but it was from the time of birth. And I had to have a C-section with him. So I've learned now that that's really traumatic. The birthing process, period, is traumatic for all of us, unless you're doing it naturally with dim lights and, you're not using all the medicine. However, with my C-section with him, I was really upset because I was really wanting to have a baby naturally. So that was just emotionally, that was taking a toll. And I just didn't realize how much my son was ingesting of my stress and my anxiety. And he was just absorbing all of that. So he came out with RSV. And then when he was about 2 months old, they could officially diagnose him with asthma. He was put on oxygen. So I'm over carrying his diaper bag, carrying the oxygen tank, just getting up, I had to get back to work after 5 weeks. I couldn't even take my full 6 week break because his dad at the time had promised, even though we weren't together, he's like, I can move back in and just help you watch him while you work. That fell through. Turned out my son was being kept with other women that my son's dad was seeing, and I didn't know about it till after the fact. They were babysitting him when he was supposed to be watching him. So all of that was just a hot mess. And I ended up, my landlord at the time ended up saying he was going to sell his place and I needed to move. And that was really a blessing in disguise. And I stayed with my mom for a little bit when Jaden was about 5, 6 weeks old. And then when he was about 10 months old, I moved to Texas with my sister just to get away from everything. And that was just really, really hard because I'm in this new state. My son had, every time I would try to get a new job, I would get the daycare calling me saying he's sick, he has a fever, you need to come get him. Every time he would get sick, it was not just a cold, it was his asthma. We'd end up in the ER, he'd be in the ICU for days. So it was just really stressful, but I was just more concerned about the stress that my son was going through. I really wasn't concerned about myself at that time. I was just in complete survival mode. So I really wasn't worried about my own health. I felt like I was made of Teflon and I could do it. I was just more concerned about the effects it had on him. So that was kind of the intro journey into motherhood. All at the same time, though, just he was just such a bright bundle of love and joy. Like without him, I don't think any of that darkness would have been worth it. So he was definitely like an angel in the midst of all of that for me.
Yeah, and thank you for sharing because you definitely went on a road. Like that was a tough journey. And so you're young, you're doing it on your own kind of. You're uncovering
Literally.
all this. Yeah. And then you still have this like kind of tenuous relationship with your dad, right? It's like estranged and you left and did the opposite of what he wanted to do. Was there ever any of that like from your parents like, well, this is exactly why we told you not to do this, or did they support you when you needed them at that time?
Well, my mom was always very supportive, but when my parents got divorced, my dad fought her. I was about 15, 16 when he fought her for custody of me, and I didn't want to stay with him. She moved about an hour away because that's where her job was, and she was thinking, I'm gonna just take you with me, but he fought her in court for me, and won. And so even though he wasn't working and he wasn't the breadwinner, my mom was our whole life, he looked like the fit dad because he was home all the time and he could take us to school. And, well, my sister was 6 years older, so she was already out of the house by then. But yeah, that was really hard because I chose to stay with my dad out of fear back then. And so move forward. My mom was very supportive. She didn't really care for my son's dad, but she was always supportive of my choices. My dad actually passed away. I found out I was pregnant with Jaden, and 2 days later, my dad passed away. So yeah, he didn't know because we hadn't talked when he disowned me when I moved out when I was 18 and pursued, the life I wanted to live. He stopped talking to me. And then we just didn't talk again. Every now and then we would like try to catch up, but he'd always have some kind of weird motive and I'd be by him. And so I would always just match his energy. And if you can disown me, I can disown you too. So we just had this very dysfunctional relationship between ourselves. So he wasn't around to tell me, this is what I was trying to tell you.
Wow. And that was a challenge that you had not mentioned in and of itself. So,
I forget about all this stuff till I talk about it because it's just all I just went into survival mode. Like I just got to keep it pushing. This is life. Nothing's stopping.
yeah.
Mhm.
And there were so many challenges that you talked about in your journey, and the fact that you were in survival mode. And I know women who their children are born and like it's like the sun has finally been shining on their lives. Like it really does complete them. It really is just a magical space when they enter into motherhood. And for me, it was not like that. I did not have that experience. I felt completely disconnected from
Mm.
becoming a mother. Like that was just not the life that I saw for myself, and there were challenges along the way. And it sounds like that was very similar for you, like just getting blindsided by so much. And like you're saying, like your child is getting that stress that you have
All of
through
it.
pregnancy and afterwards, and then the postpartum. And this is all about the challenges. Like what challenges have we overcome in our motherhood journey? And you've
Mm.
had so many, but what really was the turning point for you?
Um, I would say the turning point for me back when Jaden was born was just to get out of the toxicity of being around his dad and all the baby moms and just in the environment. I just felt like I need to get him out of here if I want a chance of just like leaving all this stuff behind. If he's not going to be a part of his life, I just came to terms with that. It was just going to be me and Jay, but I always left the door open for him. I was never spiteful and bitter or any of those things, but I don't even like what you said. It was hard for you to connect and things like that. I think I was so numb emotionally just trying to survive and making sure my son was okay because there was a lot of medical trauma. Everything was so urgent. Anybody that has asthma, because I have it, or has a child or anybody in their family with asthma, you know how urgent it is. Like 1 minute you're fine, and then the next minute you're about to die, literally. So I was always just on hyper alert. I don't think I ever had time to feel what I had going on inside or to feel disconnected. I just didn't feel a lot. I was just constantly just in fight or flight. And the turning point was just knowing that Jaden, I just did not want him to be in the midst of that anymore. I felt like I had done enough for him. So, or put him through enough. So moving to Texas was the first step. And then about a year later, we moved back. And then that's when I just kind of really just started like I got a new job and I started establishing my career and I got in banking and I had family and friends that were helping me with Jay and then I got him in, daycare pretty early and then once he started going to school, he was very social and so he kind of it's like we didn't feel like much was missing once we got out of that war zone in the beginning. And then I hit another stumbling block in my health maybe when he was like 4 or 5, I started experiencing a lot of chronic pain. So I was having digestive issues, chronic migraines. When I was pregnant with him, my asthma kicked in. I started getting asthma. So my health just started to plummet. And by the time he was about 10 or 11, I had tried doctors and specialists, and I had tried holistic modalities, and nobody could tell me what was really going on, or the doctors were just throwing a bunch of medication. I was even told by doctors that I needed to be on anti-anxiety meds because it was in my head because they didn't see anything
Mm.
wrong. Yeah. So then that kind of like tumbled into my own health crisis. So back when I was thinking I don't feel anything and I'm good and I'm surviving, my body was taking the blunt of all of that and I didn't realize. And that's what actually got me into the work that I'm doing now. I started as a health coach and I just started changing my diet and my nutrition. I started helping Jay do the same thing, thinking, if they can't help him with his asthma, they're constantly putting him on steroids. Are we going to get to the bottom of this? So my motivator was like my own health crisis and then wanting my son to I wanted to get to the root of what his body actually needed so we didn't have to keep just treating his symptoms and he could actually heal from the asthma, and me too. So that was another turning point. So I've had a couple, but I think with my health crisis, that was the biggest turning point where I just really started turning my whole life around. The work I was doing changed. I ended up quitting my full-time job in corporate banking back in 2019 to pursue this passion that I have now, and it's landed me to where I am today, which I'm thankful. But in the moments, it was really didn't make a lot of sense. So that's the method that I've created is really from blood, sweat, tears, just nights of like really feeling like I don't know how to get out of this. I'm a single mom. What if something happens to me? Who's going to take care of my son? It was just a lot of angst around. I've got to figure something out if the doctors can't help me. And so I just
Mm.
didn't take no for an answer. I didn't take, we can't do anything. It made me so mad that anger is what fueled me to be like, well, I'm going to take it into my own hands and I'm going to start researching what my body needs and what his body needs. And that's what really got me into the emotional realm also of like trauma and how that gets stored in our body and creates physical illness and mental health issues too.
Sure. And
Long
how
answer to the short question.
Yeah. No, that's great because we're also gonna have to get into there's another child too. So we're
Yes, I
only
have
through
two.
like one motherhood journey, but just talking about like trauma and how that really does impact us in our growth and our mental state, our well-being, all of that. How do you get women to the point of being able to call it out, like call a thing, this is trauma and it does actually impact me, and to be open to changing their lifestyle to address the trauma and grow from it?
Yeah, people have to feel like there is hope because I think with a lot of our traditional medical system, I don't want to demonize it, but I just felt I lost hope. I was constantly being told there's nothing wrong with you. Nobody seemed to care about me. There was no follow-up. I just felt like another number and another patient. And I was really going through a lot. My hair was falling out. I was super anxious. I was flopping between depression and anxiety, but both of them were undiagnosed. I didn't know. Just looking back with the work I do now, I can diagnose myself now. But it's and just the physical pain and then with my child as well. So first thing is just letting women know that there's hope. There's always an answer. You just have to really believe that it's possible. And second thing is I had to start feeling safe in my system and feeling really supported and validated. Like no doctor said that must be really hard. What you're going through is always let me talk you out of it or give you some facts around how you can fix it. And it just never felt good to me. Being so sensitive, that never really touched me in a way where I felt like, oh, there's hope and I feel supported here. So that is the very thing that I help my clients with is helping them feel safe and heard and validated and seen and not measuring their trauma to somebody else's. Because if you would have, when trauma first came up to me, I was like, I had a fine childhood, right? Like there was no big T traumas, if you've heard of that. Like we weren't getting beat down and there was not a lot of physical or sexual abuse. Financially, my mom was paycheck to paycheck, but we were okay. Like we had a house. And so I was looking at like all my physical needs being met. I wasn't looking at the emotional discord that went on in our household and my dad being very shut down. And when I was 19, I learned that he was in the military. And when he came back from Germany when I was 4, he left and he came back when I was 6. He had had another child out there and was kind of hiding it from all of us. So he was totally shut down, carrying his own guilt. And that's what we were resonating in my whole childhood. So it's just like generational trauma is normal. That's what I want people to know. It's not some catastrophic event. Trauma is how your body responds to something happening to you that you feel like you are helpless to. And we all experience it. It's a part of this human experience. Nobody is without some sort of emotional, mental, physical trauma. It's a part of this walk when we come into these bodies. And so that's what I would let women know. It's like there's no shame in saying, hey, I'm human and I've experienced some painful events that I didn't know how to process at the time. And some of that's probably still stuck and trapped in my body. Right. And it's creating either mental discord or physical health discord or something in your relationships, career. Like it just shows up in so many ways. And so the more we can normalize it and say, hey, we are all the same. We've just had different walks and different experiences, but nobody is without trauma. Nobody's without a broken heart or feeling shame or feeling guilt about something in their life. So I just say the thing to that is to normalize it. We all experience it. Nobody's alone in that. And there's help to be gotten.
Wow. That just like took my breath away just hearing trauma is normal.
It's normal. We all are going to experience it. Like I said, the birth process is traumatic. There's all these bright fluorescent lights. It's loud. It's cold in the room. A lot of times the mom is getting epidural, so she's not in pain. The doctors are just going quickly. It's just a traumatic process. And so from the time we come into this world, our bodies are already and our nervous systems are already feeling overwhelmed just by the weight of life. And it's just a normal thing. And the more we can normalize it, the less heavy it feels and the easier it is to talk about it.
Yeah, that's great. And how did that, like your growth and, building the calm remedy and all of that, how did that impact your second pregnancy?
Oh, it was night and day. So my sons are really far apart. They're about 16 years apart. But being a single mom with Jaden, I knew I kind of did that on purpose because I knew I wasn't a solid no for having kids, but I knew I wasn't going to go rush it or force that. But I really yearned for a family. Like I really wanted a family dynamic. It's something Jaden always wanted, and I was never able to give him a sibling when he was younger because it wasn't like I was just going to go out and just pick somebody and be like, "Can you be my baby daddy?" Like I'm not doing that. So I always told Jaden, if God wants that to happen, it'll happen. And so coming into my second pregnancy, I was in a more stable relationship. My youngest is 3 now. And I was just in a different, I had the support of, his dad, and Jaden was there, and I was eating healthier. I was doing more health coaching. I was more mindful of just all of the stress and all of the things. I meditated a lot more. So it was a more conscious experience for me. I did run into complications. My son was not my placenta went out when I was about 6 or 7 months pregnant, and so he wasn't getting the nutrients he needed. So he was really tiny, and they had to like induce me at like 36 weeks because he just wasn't growing. And so when he was born, he was very like angry, like he had a lot of rage and anger, and it's been like that for 3 years. So I was just like blown away because I'm thinking I was so calm and I had my remedy, and it's just like his personality was night and day from Jaden's. And so I had to really, that's where I felt the disconnect, and I went through a postpartum with him, because I couldn't connect with him. There would be nights when he was like 1, 2 months old, he would just scream and wail and cry, and nothing would console him. I would have to go sit in my car in the garage so that it wouldn't wake up the whole household, just to let him cry in the seat because he didn't want me to hold him. It would infuriate him. He didn't want to be fed. I was trying to breastfeed him. It was always something I wanted to do that I didn't get a chance to do with Jaden because I went back to work too soon. And it was just like I had such a different environment for Hakeem, that's my youngest. And he came out, and I'm still learning about like what was happening with him, because to me I was like, he hasn't had any trauma. Like he's got two loving parents. I mean, we're in this, where both of me and his dad are really calm and low key, and like we were just like, holy cow, like what is going on here? And then when he got to be a toddler, he just would throw like crazy meltdowns that would last hours and hours, and like he would just rage and nothing would calm him. And I was worried about him. I was worried about his mental health. And then the more I started studying and doing the work, he just came out with a dysregulated nervous system, probably because he was hungry. He wasn't getting fed for a couple months and they're in the womb. And so I'm still putting the pieces together, but I've developed a more conscious, I'm sure you've heard gentle parenting. Like I was raised old school and I raised Jaden like that too. But when Jaden was about 11 or 12, I saw it wasn't working. It was creating a disconnect between us. So I started shifting my parenting inherently, just very intuitively when Jaden was younger. So with Hakeem, it was a lot easier to like hold space and kind of do it differently. And that's kind of been the journey and the challenges I've had with Hakeem is that family members think I'm being soft with him and they think I'm letting him get away, but I'm seeing that this child is clearly struggling. And he needs connection. He doesn't need correction right now. And that is the first step of my calm remedy is to connect. So I'm realizing too, it's universal. I was using it for me and I use it for my clients, but you can use it with your kids and other people as well as your kids don't need their behavior corrected first. They need you to connect and understand that they're struggling and really get down to the bottom of what it is they need. So Hakeem came out like teaching me. He came in here to be my teacher. I thought I was going to be raising him. He's teaching me a lot. So it was a different challenge and it threw me off guard because I felt like everything was all in lined up. So I felt like he was just going to be this calm, peaceful child. And he came out like, psych, there's some more to learn.
Yeah, and that's just how it happens. And I think too, one of the biggest things is we are growing, like as mothers and as women, we are growing every day and we are changing every day. And
Yes.
I think it's safe to say that when you had Jaden, you were like not the same woman as you were
At
when you
all.
had Hakeem, right? So,
Yeah.
like, just the way that you can identify what he needs and what you need as well, because we can't parent correctly if we're not pouring back into ourselves and coming as whole as we can in the best way that we can to give our kids what we need. And I think that motherhood, like, that is the challenge. It's really not as much about, oh, they're not sleeping or they're not eating. Like, for me, it's that they are a human and they don't have all the tools that they need to like
None.
regulate and to be able to
Yes.
tell you that they're hungry. Like, they get hungry and I'm like, what do you want to eat? And my daughter's like, I don't know. I'm like,
And then you
help
make
me.
something and they're like, I don't want that.
Like, that's what's hard. Like,
Yes.
it's the mental load that comes with that.
Yes.
And you don't know if you did a good job until way, way later.
And I think too, as mothers, especially dads too, just there's no perfect parenting. And I think as mothers, we hold ourselves to this high standard. Like with Jaden, I always beat myself up for being a single mom and for who his dad was and things that, and I was just comparing myself to other moms that had families. I beat myself up for going back to work when, moms, I felt like I was being judged by moms who were like, "Oh my God, you should be with your child the first year." And, there's so much like I always felt like I wasn't doing it right. And I always held myself to this high, high standard that I could never even reach. And I think a lot of us moms do that. What I'm learning, especially with Hakeem and Jaden also, is we're gonna mess up. We're not perfect people. We're still healing and growing and evolving, and that's what our kids are here for. Is the things that they trigger in us is our little inner children that didn't get their needs met and didn't get heard. So like all of the anger that Hakeem came out, I'm learning with a lot of the specialists I'm working with now with my pain is that it's not medical. I have a lot of built-in rage and anger from not being able to speak up and express my emotions as a child. Like I'm getting that correlation now in my 40s. And so like kids just they're not going to be perfect. We're not going to be perfect. What is the most important thing that you can do is the repair. You're going to mess it up. So when I snap at Hakeem or I act a way that I used to act when I tell him old mama came out, um, I don't beat myself up for that anymore because now I can have my moment and I can regulate myself with my tools. And then I can go to him, help him regulate. And then we can talk about it. And I can say, hey, mama acted out because I was feeling
Mm.
XYZ and I'm human too. And I'm really sorry. You didn't deserve that. But I'm not going to promise it won't happen again. I just keep it all the way real. Like I'm human and I'm learning and I'm growing and I have emotions just like you. And I have bad days just like you and meltdowns just like you. So the more real us as moms can be with our kids, they want realness. They don't want perfection. And you don't want to try to be perfect because you're going to stress yourself out, make yourself sick trying to, reach that bar. That's not even reachable. There's no such thing.
Yeah. Yes, to our listeners, make sure you write that down. Our kids want realness, not perfection. That is a gem right there. I'm curious, Tiffany, like that same process that you use to communicate with your kids, like when you're having a bad moment, you weren't being your best self, etc. Do you have that same meter almost when it comes to you and your spouse?
You can, I try, there's a lot, obviously our spouses are going to trigger us way different than our kids do. But yeah, just the calm remedy is connection to self. It's about relationship and how you're shifting your relationship with yourself and the way you relate and communicate and connect with other people. So yeah, it's universal. I use it across the board. It's a lot harder to do with my spouse, especially when we're going through our struggles and our ups and downs. However, also in hindsight, once I calm down and I'm not as triggered and the first thing for me is always just connecting to myself and validating myself for what I'm feeling instead of telling myself I shouldn't be feeling this way or I should be doing this. Like I don't should all over myself anymore. If I'm angry, if I'm pissed, if it's not justified, I still validate myself first and feel very heard and seen and held by myself. Then I have the capacity and I'm regulated to go and tell my husband, hey, I was tripping, or I was acting really I had a lot of anxiety, or I was angry and I'm still angry. I'm not over it yet. And I don't know when I'm going to be. So it's the same thing, just keep it real and not trying to show up and be this perfect person or people please and protect your spouse from their own feelings or from your feelings. Like I don't do that anymore because that took up a lot of energy and that was contributing to a lot of my health issues.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that what like how people say like when your kids around their mom they act like they're starting to act out because they're just so comfortable, they say that's why they
Yeah.
do it. I feel like that happens in your relationship, like what your child is to the mom with that, it's like you're like that with your partner. Like
Oh,
they
that's
are
so
going
good.
to see you just being wild and you're just like, hey, i'm 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 sorry, like I have to be so
Put
polish so much of
together.
the day and so it's like when I get around you it's safe and I just kind of fall apart. Like that's not an excuse, that doesn't mean you deserve that. I just feel like with partnership, true partnership, like that's how it
You're
happens.
so on point with that because I've told my husband that, like, you're really safe. I've been in a lot of dysfunctional relationships where I didn't have room to be safe because they were so dysfunctional. So my husband's so calm and even kilter. Now I feel like, oh, now I can just let go and just stop keeping, like, just let all the buttons go. I don't have to keep everything buttoned up together. They can all just fly off. And he gets some of the ugliest sides of me, bless his heart. And like you said, it's not an excuse. I think the thing with that, because there's a lot of guilt and shame around that when we don't know how to articulate it and we don't know how to come in and soothe ourselves in those moments, we end up beating ourselves up and shaming ourselves even more. Now I come in and I give permission to be that angry little girl that never got to get her voice out. And once I regulate myself and calm myself down, then I can go talk to my husband and say, hey, that wasn't cool. However, if you get on my nerves again, I'm gonna probably do it again. Like, and then he has a choice that he can make a choice. So do I want to deal with this or not? But I'm keeping it all the way real now but I never used to be able to do that because I was not even aware of what I needed. I wasn't aware how to articulate my emotions. I was just really emotionally unaware of a lot of things because I just was a stuffer. I stuffed everything down and I just kept it. I suppressed everything because everybody told me as a child I was too emotional, I was too sensitive, I was too this, I take everything too personal. So I took that as, well, let me not have emotion. Let me not care.
Mm.
Let me just get numb. And my emotions don't go away. They follow you like a shadow. So you can stuff them and you can think 10, 20 years have passed and you've gotten over something. But if you're having symptoms, any kind of health symptoms, mental health symptoms like anxiety, depression, OCD, ADHD, all of those things link back to suppressed, unresolved, and unprocessed emotion. That's what I'm finding in my work and with my clients, myself, and in my research and with my children. So,
Yeah. And for the listeners, like make sure y'all check Tiffany out. Like she's not just talking about it, like she lives her life through this and has such great resources and is growing a lot along the way
Yeah,
too.
for
And I
sure.
think that growth piece is very important in identifying that. Um, what I want to know is like how has becoming a mother, like how has that pushed you to accomplish your goals, like your personal goals and your professional goals in life?
Yeah, that's such a good question. With Jaden, it really helped me through that hard time with his dad because if I didn't get Jaden out of that, I probably would have fallen into like some type of depression spiral or anxiety spiral of feeling really shameful of my choice to be with a man like that and not realize what I was in because I was so naive. So Jaden really helped me just pursue life and keep going with life and know that I was worthy. And there was a reason why I was here. And then, moving forward in his life, coming from my corporate career and really coming into the health and the wellness and the emotional health realm of the coaching that I do, he really inspired me to want to feel better. So I would have energy when he got older and I wasn't going to be all crippled up and in pain and bedridden. I didn't want him to see me like that. And so it really pushed me to be like, okay, if the doctors don't know, then I'm like a dog with a bone. I'm going to figure it out. And I can be really hard headed. And this is where finally it's worked in my favor. Usually it doesn't, but this is the one time it did. So he really helped inspire me to get healthier. And on that journey of getting healthier is where I discovered my true calling and passion to serve and help other people and women emotionally. That was like the real root of what I was seeking when I was eating better and trying to help get rid of my physical symptoms and my pain. That pain was really a portal into my purpose. And so now with Hakeem and Jaden being older and seeing him as a young adult, I'm really inspired by my kids. I want them to see me go for it. And you don't have to live a traditional life. You don't have to follow the system and do it the way society says. Like I quit my job when I was almost 40. People thought I was having a midlife crisis. I'm telling them I'm going to be a life coach and I'm going to do that full time. And people were looking at me like I was speaking a foreign language, like, what is that? And how are you going to make doing that? And then when I started doing the emotions and now I call myself an emotional care coach, like I made that up. Like that's not something I went to school for. Like it's just all of this has been so unreal and so untraditional. And that's what my kids inspire me to show them they can pave their own path. They can do whatever they want. If they want to follow the traditional way, I'll support them. But if they want to do and really follow their passions and do what their true soul's calling is here on this earth, it inspires me to be doing that so that they can see what's available to them because I didn't have really anybody in my family that was like doing what I'm doing. So I've been having to like figure it all out on my own and it hasn't been easy, but it's been worth it for sure.
Absolutely. I
Yeah.
agree with that wholeheartedly. And, I think any profession that is out there, someone made it up at
For real.
one point, right?
Yeah, that's so true. So true. Yes.
They think we're
Yeah.
wild, but we're just the next group of innovators, right? So
Yeah.
that don't ever feel discredited.
Thank you.
Before we get into our final question, Tiffany, can you just tell everybody like where they can find you, where they can find your services and resources?
Yeah, you can find me on Facebook. It's Tiffany West. And then I'm in Aurora, Colorado, because there are a ton of Tiffany West. Or you can find me on Instagram at Tiffany Coach Me. And my website is tiffanycoachme.com. There you could book a free wake up call with me. We can get on the phone, we get on Zoom, and it's very casual. There's no pressure. I just get to know you, see what some of your struggles are, and then you can see if I'm a fit for somebody that might be able to support you if you're in any kind of emotional crisis or if you're just wanting to, if you feel good emotionally, because the second part of my work is I help you start manifesting the things you want in your life using energy work and a lot of the woo woo stuff, which it's not woo woo, it's science. But I really help you really design a life, especially if you're coming out of a career or you're trying to do some kind of transition and you're really scared and not sure what direction to take. I help my clients with that as well. So I'd love to connect, and that's where you can find me.
beautiful. Make sure y'all find Tiffany where she is so you can get one of those wake up calls. That's beautiful. Even the name of it, like we know when it's time for
Hmm.
that, and to have the support through that is very important. We don't have to do everything on our own. I think, Tiffany, you're very special in that you are able to identify your needs and create a path to get you like the fulfillment that you need, but not everybody can do that, and that's okay. That's okay.
I would never advise the route that I went down. I was like a caterpillar, very destructive, just blindly trying to find my way. And I appreciate it. And I have to give credit to the coaches that I hired and the therapists that I hired and everybody that's been along my journey. I would not, I'm very biased about everybody needs a coach. Everybody needs some type of therapist or mental health professional. And it's not when you're in crisis, it's maintenance, just like we all have car insurance. This is like a self-care investment that you're making in yourself. It's a lot deeper than just waiting until you are in a full-blown crisis to go out and get the help. And if that would be the advice I would give to people. I waited until I was in full-blown crisis. But now I just have regular coaches and people to help me just because I like them in my back pocket. It's always nice to have support, like you said. I don't think we're supposed to do it alone. We're supposed to be doing this in community.
Absolutely. And that is a really nice segue to our final question. Tiffany, what does self-care look like for you?
Oh man, it is so far past, the pampering, which I'm not against, the hair, the nails, the spas, even the holistic like yoga and Reiki and body work. I love all of that. I geek out on all of that. But for me, what I have found is self-care is I'm watching and I'm mindful. How am I talking to myself? What is the dialogue that I'm using? What is the tone? What's the energy? Am I being self-abusive? I think self-abuse is the most underrated abuse on the planet, and it's the most under acknowledged and under like there's no penalty for it. Like you can't go around abusing other people. There's it's a crime. Like you'll end up going to jail and paying high fines for it. But true self-care is really getting to the root of what you need on an emotional level, really taking care of your body, listening to what your body is telling you versus thinking that your body is trying to work against you. Or I know I thought my body was mad at me. I had a really awful relationship with my body. So self care looks like rebuilding that relationship with myself and reparenting my inner child and giving her all of the emotional support that I didn't get as a child. And again, it's no blame to my parents. They were awesome and capable with all they had. I would never knock them for that. And I have to be honest and speak my truth that there were just some needs that I had that I didn't get met. And that's what self care looks like to me now. So I call it soul care because it's deeper. It really goes down to the root of really listening to yourself and taking care of yourself emotionally, mentally, and physically.
That is beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing to our listeners. As
Thank
always,
you.
thank you so much for being here. And y'all know I will talk to you very soon. Check out Tiffany's resources, please. She is here to help you. She's doing the work and she's here living in her purpose. Thank you so much. And we'll talk soon.
Thank you, Brittany. Bye, everybody.